I had to talk to you about something that is serious. I don't want to be disrespectful, but you know how I like to tell the truth. So I'm glad that you're here this morning. And this one is particularly important and familiar to me, and because it involves something that I believe is controlling of people, something that distorts people's thinking, and something that is disrespectful of actual, true Christianity, and the danger that religion poses. Now, I say this as a person of faith. As you know, I wrote a book about it. I'm not saying that you don't have to go out and buy it. I'm just saying, I'm just showing you this because I know. Just a year ago, was it September? A year ago this month, this book came out. And I warned people about the dangers of Christian nationalism, white nationalism, but Christian, wrapped in Christian nationalism. And that's a real thing. You can want to believe that it's happening or not. That's your business. That's on you, whether you would like to believe what I'm saying or not. But good morning, and we're going to get into it. And I'm going to show you some of the things that happened this past weekend. But this is something that I need to say because I think it's very important, especially for my country and for anyone of faith, regardless of whatever your faith is. Whatever it is, I want to talk to you about sanctified power and what Charlie Kirk's memorial revealed about America. That's what I want to talk about. And I'm going to talk to you, and this is on page 77 of my book. And I went back and I read it, and I was a little bit late this morning with my producers because I've been thinking about this all night, and I was writing, and I said, do I want to do this? Do I want to write it as a Substack? What do I want to do? So let me just tell you, this is the pretext to what I'm about to tell you. True freedom of religion would support democracy, foster mutual understanding, and encourage critical thinking. You guys with me? True advocates of religion, of freedom of religion, would advocate for enlightenment, education, and open-hearted dialogue, respectful conversations among people who disagree without judging or jockeying for power. You see where I'm going? True freedom of religion is possible only if we honor the absolute separation of church and state. Remember, I said the impetus of this book that I said on every single time I had to promote it or talk about it was the blurring or the erasing of the line between state and church. And that's what religious nationalists were doing. And many of them white nationalists it's white nationalism wrapped in religious nationalism. We can have freedom of religion, or we can have a Christian nation. We can't have both. Evangelicals know this, and it's clear which side of the narthex they're on. Even evangelical zealots preach freedom of religion and practice oppression. They're taking a familiar page from the time-worn authoritarian playbook. It's not about faith, it's about control. Get into people's heads. Are you listening? I hope you're with me. Because if you didn't go to church yesterday, we're about to go. Get into people's heads by way of their hearts. Swaddle the loss of liberty in religious dogma, and then use faith communities to mobilize voters and codify oppression into law. Religion does a great job of teaching people to suspend their disbelief and submit themselves to a higher power. If the higher power were a benevolent God, that would be nice. But in this case, we're talking about ruthless, self-dealing men who use God's name for personal gain, promising salvation and pitching nostalgia for a Christian nation that never existed. Right-wing power mongers conflate religious zeal with patriotism, then conflate patriotism with nationalism. And the effect is powerful enough to break the sacred bonds of the family. With a charismatic wannabe despot as their front man, they sample the Bible and the Constitution the way Ice Cube samples the Isley Brothers in It Was a Good Day. You hear it in there, that unmistakable riff from Footsteps in the Dark, but it is a whole new jam. That's how you persuade people to vote against their own interests in extreme, self-sabotaging ways. That's how you get decent, intelligent people to vote against their right to health care, their family's economic well-being, and their sexually diverse children's right to exist. I know how that feels. I know what it's like to need God so desperately, you're willing to listen to anyone who seems qualified to connect you to him. There was a time when I begged God to extinguish that part of my spirit that made me my authentic self. Please make me not be gay. Please make me not be gay. I ache for that little kid I was, the little kid Eduardo, who I wrote about earlier in the book, was, and the millions of little kids who prayed that self-loathing prayer before and after us. All we can do now is stand up for the children of tomorrow and do our best to push this democracy towards a truer, more useful definition of religious freedom. And these are the things that they said Charlie Kirk stood for. He was a man of faith. And the reason that that struck me so is because I got a text from a friend who said, I am a Black woman. The person who babysits my child is a Black woman from Jamaica. And she says, Charlie Kirk was a person of faith. And I say to them, okay, so what does that mean, a person of faith? How does a person of faith act? How does a person who really believes in what God and the scriptures say, the true meaning of it, not the distorted meaning, how would they treat the least of these? So what I say now is that what happened in Arizona this weekend was not just a memorial, it was something else entirely. People will tell you that it is about grief. It was about grief, about honoring a man's life, about faith. And on the surface, you know, maybe it looked like that. Tens of thousands gathered. The music swelled. I'm sure some of you saw it. I just saw some of the sound bites. There were prayers and tears and moments of silence. But if you stayed long enough for the little bit that I could stay, and then I said, you know what, I'm out. If you listen long enough and close enough, if you stayed long enough and you listen close enough, you could feel the ground shifting beneath you, because that wasn't just about a man who died. This was about a movement claiming divine permission to rule. Can I get a witness? And all of the sound bites and the words used will reveal to you exactly what I said. It was a revival meeting wrapped in a memorial. I'm from the South, Southern Baptist, went to Catholic school. You know what a revival meeting is, right? That is the holiest of holy rollers having a revival. Let the church say amen. It was a revival meeting wrapped in a memorial, a political rally dressed as church. And by the end of the night, it was clear this was not only about Charlie Kirk's death. It was about his afterlife in politics. Donald Trump stood on the stage like a man at the center of a prophecy. He called Charlie Kirk a martyr. Other politicians promised to carry out his mission. The crowd cheered as if the passing of the man had lit some sort of sacred fire. To me, this was not mourning, this was a mobilization. And here is where we have to tell the truth here. What we saw in that arena was not simply faith finding public expression. It was religious nationalism on full display. That is the truth. That is my truth. This is my freedom of expression. This is my First Amendment right to be able to tell you the truth from my point of view. Not just from my point of view. This is what it is. The language was unmistakable. Take the nation back for God. Restore America's covenant. This is a holy calling. That's what it sounded like. This is not the language of democracy. This is the language of domination. Because I feel many people, when I wrote this book, said, I had no idea that you were a person of faith, that you had such strong belief in the Almighty. And I say, because faith is a private matter. It comforts, it convicts, it calls us to humility. But when faith fuses with power, it begins to ask for something else. It asks for obedience. It divides the country into the saved and the damned, the chosen and the condemned. It turns opponents into enemies of God. And when politicians wrap themselves in scripture, they are not calling us to virtue. They are demanding submission. That is why this matters. It matters to me. That's why it should matter to you and to everyone. You have to see you have to see beyond the illusion. You have to remove the filter of ideology from your eyes and your spirit. That's why this matters, because the moment religion becomes a tool of politics, dissent starts to sound like blasphemy. That is the point. You cannot go against me. This is blasphemous. You cannot say the truth about and use someone's own words because this is blasphemy. Now, not everyone in that arena would call themselves white nationalists. Most wouldn't. But history teaches us to listen carefully when leaders start talking about taking the country back, about restoring a covenant, about returning to some imagined moral order. I'm going to show you the proof, but I'm going to have my piece first. Because this is not a new story, but just on this level. This is a new level of the same story, because this story has been told before. An America ordained by God, a people under siege, a hero struck down by outsiders. In this particular world, we're not all one human altogether. The person who doesn't carry your ideology or belief is made to be an outsider. That story built Jim Crow. It baptized segregation. It told generations of Black Americans that freedom, faith, and democracy belong to someone else first. And in order to have yours, you got to humble yourself. You got to pray. You've got to follow orders. You have to go along with the man and the system. Don't move too fast. Don't offend. Don't be too Black. It always starts the same way, an appeal to God. It ends the same way too, with power protecting itself at all costs. I don't think you guys heard me, because when I am either on my knees or in my sacred place, even when I am walking down the street, or if I'm in a taxi, if I'm on an airplane, whatever, I am praying and making an appeal to my God that you don't know about. And you don't need to know, because it's my relationship with him. But this whole thing that's happening now, it always starts the same way. An appeal to God, somewhat publicly, performative faith, like we have performative patriotism. It ends the same way too, with power protecting itself at all costs. And this is where the First Amendment comes in. Because remember, you can't kneel to pay respect to our men and women in uniform and then protest something that you think is an injustice that's happening to people in this country, remember the Colin Kaepernick of it all. But if you're Tim Tebow, you can kneel as much as you want in the end zone and it is okay. Or you can be lauded for religious ideology or speaking out for Charlie Kirk, or with the whole irony of it all of these NFL teams that are doing moments of silence. Fine, do your moments of silence, but don't fire Colin Kaepernick for the same thing that you're doing. When you say, we just want football. We don't want to bring anything else. We just want to be entertained. If you want to be entertained, then don't do the thing. I'm not saying you should do it at all, but if you're going to do it, then you need to be equal and fair with everyone. I don't think you guys heard me, because this is for all the people I'm sure they're going to attack me and say, oh my God, you're disrespecting. No, I'm not. I'm telling the truth. I'm not disrespecting. And guess what? The memorial service is over. So let's analyze it. This is my First Amendment right to be able to do so. So this is where the First Amendment comes in. The First Amendment protects faith. It protects speech. It protects the freedom to believe or not to believe, to speak or to stay silent, to worship in private or in public. But it also protects us from the fusion of church and state. Now, if you don't think church and state fused yesterday, then you are blinded by the dark. The memorial in Arizona blurred that line until you could not tell where the gospel ended and the campaign speech began. And when faith becomes the handmaiden of political power, freedom does not expand, it contracts. Because in a democracy, faith must be free and politics must be accountable. The moment they fuse, democracy itself begins to wobble. Now, let me say this for all of you haters and all of you people who are looking for something to hit me with. Go for it. I don't care. There was one voice on that stage that did not follow that script, at least yesterday, and that is Charlie Kirk's widow. She spoke. And she, who, as far as I could see, was the only one who sounded like a Christian in the truest sense of the word. She spoke of forgiveness. She spoke of grace, of love that transcends politics. She didn't demand votes or vengeance. She did not call the faithful to arms. She honored her husband's life without turning it into a weapon. And that moment deserves respect because it was the only moment of humility on a night otherwise filled with ambition. She didn't do it at a memorial service honoring her late husband. We'll see what happens in the future. And that too may deserve criticism. It does. First Amendment, it will. Regardless if you agree with her, what she's doing in the future or not. People will talk about it, they will analyze it, and they will criticize it. It is your First Amendment right to do so. I'm sorry. For those of you who don't believe that. That was her, but the rest of the evening was like a MAGA rally. It was a political rally, a call to arms dressed up as a call to prayer. It turned a man into a symbol into a banner, and a banner into a battle flag. And when you wrap power investments like that, history tells us it always demands more. It demands more loyalty, more silence, more control. And you know that is the criticism of people who don't believe. They're like, I believe in God, but I'm not religious, because religion demands control. Religion was used to control women, to subjugate women. It was used to enslave people. A tainted interpretation of scriptures used to do that, and they twist them into anything that they want, and they're doing it right now. It does not invite questions. That is a danger of religious nationalism. It does not share power. It sanctifies power. Doesn't invite questions. It treats them as heresy. You can't question it. That's heresy. Blasphemy. You heathen. You non-believer. How dare you not believe in my ideology? If you don't believe in my ideology, then you don't believe in God. You're not a true Christian. You're not a true American. Control. And when you layer race into that story, and that as it is almost always is layered there, you begin to see the outlines of something even older, even more familiar. You know what I'm talking about. Faith should comfort the mourning. It should call the power to humility. It should speak truth to power. It should not sanctify it. Did you hear me? Faith should comfort the mourning. And I know about comfort, and I'm sure you do too. I've had losses, so many losses in the last couple of years. I know about comforting the mourning. And if people had said what they said and behaved the way they behaved, Donald Trump, Stephen Miller, Tucker Carlson, Pete Hegseth, at a memorial for my sister, plural, and other members of my family who are close, who passed away, I would not be happy with them. I would have walked up there and said, get off the stage. That's not what this is about. It should call the powerful to humility. It should speak truth to power, not sanctify it. What we saw in Arizona did exactly the opposite of that. It wrapped political ambition in sacred language. It baptized a campaign in grief. It told millions of Americans that loyalty to God and loyalty to one political leader were the same thing. And don't pretend you didn't see it. And don't pretend it wasn't on purpose. Because the truth of the matter is that as awful, as untimely, as unnecessary and unwarranted that Charlie Kirk's death was, for the most part, most people had no idea of who he was. And when they found out what he said, they had a lot of questions about why some on the right or in the MAGA movement were trying to sanctify or deify him. Was it real? Or was it a grift? Are they death grifting on a man's untimely, unfortunate death? Now, I know what I think. I know what I hear and see when I hear them on television, when I heard or saw them at the memorial. I know what I thought. Wait, is this about Charlie Kirk or is this about policy? Is this about Charlie Kirk or is it about your big ballroom? Is this about Charlie Kirk or it's about the big beautiful bill? Is this about Charlie Kirk or is it about Black people? Is this about Charlie Kirk or is it about women, subjugating women? Is this about Charlie Kirk or is it about demonizing gay people and transgender people? So what is this about, actually? Don't demonize someone who is doing a constructive criticism or who is using their free speech. Don't demonize them to make excuses for your own grifting. Because the people who are actually speaking out and saying, this is what I feel about Charlie Kirk, this is what he said, actually, they're doing him a service. They are actually honoring him in the way that he would want. Because that's why he stood, that's what he said, in front of all those college kids, in front of everyone, and he let them ask him all the questions that they wanted to and criticize them as much as they wanted to, and then he responded in kind. But you are trying to stop that. What's that all about? What is the best way for me to expand my MAGA political bona fides? What is the best way for me to get more clicks? What is the best way to elevate myself in this movement, in the world, in my podcast, in my whatever? What is? And if that offends you, then check yourself. If it doesn't, then you know what I'm talking about. Candace Owens, number one, case in point. And wait till I'm going to play you the soundbite of Candace Owens. Candace Owens is saying virtually the same thing that I'm saying. I see you. I see what you're doing. And in order to quail the criticism of what you're doing, you are demonizing me and saying that I'm being disrespectful when you are the one who is showing the ultimate disrespect or non-respect. Once power puts on vestments, once it claims divine authority, it never stops asking for more. You know, we have a saying in the community, you give a you know what an inch, they'll take a mile. And that is what I mean by that line. You give a Trump an inch, he'll take a mile. That's why what happened in Arizona matters far beyond one man's death. Because when religion and politics fuse like that, the result is never freedom. It's always control. And that is a warning the rest of this country cannot afford to ignore. Thanks everyone for watching. Your support means the world to us. So make sure you hit the like button and you subscribe to our channel to make sure that you never ever miss a video. We're live every day, 10 a.m. Eastern time. We drop even more content at 2 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Eastern. And if you want more Don Lemon Show content, we'd love for you to become a member of the Lemon community, where you will receive access to special community posts. You'll get exclusive content and members-only live shows. So head over to our channel page or click the join button on this video. Again, thank you for watching. We appreciate your love and your support, and we will see you next time.